he didn't make them any worse than Clermont. Philip Clermont had never won a post-group stage knockout game in Europe in any club he's been in charge of. But it's quite a thing by Clermont to get us through to the stage he did, to get us into the last 16, 2 seasons in the trot. That was impressive. But Barry's improved that. He's got us into a quarter final, and against Jose Mourinho, who's basically about as great a European manager as you can get, and his very first European match as a manager, Barry beats him. I mean, we scudded them. We scudded them all ends up over in Istanbul. And a great night, even though we lost on the night at Ibrox, the penalty shoot, it was a glorious night. It was so exciting. It was a magic moment. So I'll always thank him for that. I'll thank him for our first win in 4 seasons, 5 years at Parkhead. That's much needed. So why shouldn't he get the job? Because he's inherited a squad that's not his. What if he was going to get the money to spend on his own players? Surely would improve things. I just don't think any of us feel as if he's got the managerial experience. And he managed at a lower league level. Celtic Hearts, Clyde's, I think it was Blackpool caretaker manager at one point, Alloa Athletic. It was over a year or 2 years since he'd managed anybody, and he's been doing this ambassadorial role at Ibrox. But I think it's either going to be all or nothing with Barry, the way he's talking. But I don't think that's enough for what we need from a modern Rangers manager. And I think it's also a big dose of new manager bounce. It was a lovely change. Clermont, people start to hate Clermont. They hate any manager who's in charge and isn't doing the business. That's why I feared so much for Barry. When he was, the idea he was going to start struggling in the job, or Celtic were going to win the league at Ibrox, or Celtic were going to give him a scudding, or we got an absolute mauling in Europe after one of these really decent sides he come up against. That's why it was so great that never happened. But new manager bounce. I think it was he comes in and he's so familiar. We suddenly started seeing Clermont, particularly after the Queen's Park defeat, which he didn't get. You could see that Clermont did not understand what the Queen's Park defeat meant. You saw it in the press conference. It took Ronnie Espin at the PA to tell him, "You shouldn't be here. This is you can't do this at Rangers. You can't lose that game and then remain as Rangers manager." So to have somebody who's suddenly so familiar and all the associations, the glory days in which Barry Ferguson played, and despite the fact that Walter Smith had to let Barry go back in 2009. You get this as one of Walter Smith's. Walter Smith gave Barry his Rangers debut, and first brought him in to the first team, and then had to deal with him when he lost his discipline in 2009 as well. But just that kind of a son of Walter type thing, and all the associations with Barry and Derek Ferguson, and it was a lovely thing. It was like a kind of security blanket, and it was nice. It was